Welcome, everybody. I'm Sara Winkelman. I'm the JCRC Director of Education Programs and Services, and I'm honored to be here tonight facilitating with Samantha and Aaron. So thank you both for being part of this. I'm going to let you guys introduce yourself in a minute, but this came about. I was talking with my colleague Alexis Schwartz at American Jewish Committee. Thank you, Alexis, for helping plan this program with me. And really, we felt there's really been a desire for a conversation from parents in our area talking about what's going on for them and for their kids or their students. So thank you for being part of this. Just quick, this is co-sponsored with American Jewish Committee and JCRC. So the American Jewish Committee is the global advocacy organization for the Jewish people. AJC's mission is to enhance the well-being of the Jewish people in Israel and to advance democratic values and promote pluralism in the United States and around the world. AJC engages with leaders at the highest levels of government and civil society to counter anti-Semitism, stand with and support Israel, and mobilize policymakers to act from 25 offices across the United States, including the Washington Regional Office, which is the group we're working with, 14 international posts, as well as partnerships with 38 Jewish community organizations worldwide. Very hard to give someone else's mission statement, I now realize. Okay, so the JCRC, the Jewish Community Relations Council, is the public face of the Jewish community to the greater community, representing all the synagogues and Jewish organizations within the greater Washington community. We're the chief government affairs of the local Jewish community at the state and local levels, advocating on a wide range of issues that help build a stronger community for everyone. So in my role, I work with all the stakeholders of the public school systems, helping build understanding about Judaism, about Jewish students today, about anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism. I help both respond to specific incidents as well as offering proactive programs to schools throughout the DMV. I help families if they need assistance. I know some of you that are on the call today I have spoken with to really help us build a better community for our kids in our schools today. So I'm excited to be here. I know that we've all been working really hard. I know Aaron and Samantha both have been working hard. So thank you for taking the time. I'm trying to find a time the three of us could fit in our schedule was not so simple. So thank you. A little bit of housekeeping. We just did it as a webinar because there was a lot of people signed up. That was a lot easier. We are going to have time for Q&A. So there is a Q&A button at the bottom that you can put your questions in, and then we'll try to get to as many as possible. So I'm going to start by really letting Samantha and Aaron introduce themselves. I'm going to ask them a few questions, and we'll have a little conversation here, and then we'll open up to everybody. So with that, I think I really want to start with sort of, what are you two hearing from parents? Like, we think that people are trying to understand I'm sorry, I don't mean from parents. What are you hearing from students? Sorry, can't speak. Because parents are trying to understand, like, what our students, our children, what are other students feeling and thinking. I think there is some disconnect between parents and students, between parents and their kids sometimes. So if you guys, I don't know which one of you want to start, Aaron, and then we'll have Samantha go. And
Sure, I'm happy to start. Thank you again for having me this evening. Really appreciate the opportunity. Just as Sara pointed out, just give a quick context about myself and background. Again, my name is Aaron Bregman. I'm originally from Boston, actually, but I've lived in the DC area since early 2000s. I went to school here at American University. And after grad school, I ended up becoming a history teacher back in Boston for a few years. And then I worked at an organization called the David Project, which doesn't exist anymore, but it used to be an Israel education organization. And where I was sort of high school program manager, I would go around the country and writing curriculum on the Arab-Israeli conflict for Jewish day school teachers. After that, I ended up actually moving back here in 2012, where I was the chair of the Jewish History Department at the Charles E. Smith Jewish Day School. And I was in that role until I just left last July. So currently, right now, I am the director of high school affairs at the American Jewish Committee. And I'm really happy to be here and kind of talk to you about what I've been hearing for the most part of the last very difficult 2 weeks. Excuse me. And so what I've been seeing, and as a national director on the high school front, I'm the first one to hold this position. And what I've really seen is, whether it's from New York City down to Sarasota, Florida, to Plano, Texas, all the way up to San Francisco, there's a lot happening, obviously, depending on it's an independent school, public school. I know we're going to focus more on those this evening than the day school model. And at least in those two first sectors I mentioned, what I'm seeing is that we're getting, and Samantha, certainly tell me if you disagree with this, but what I'm seeing and hearing is that we're certainly at this point moving away from the statement issue. I know for the first week and a half, statements were all the conversation, whether a school did it correctly, didn't do it at all, what the best model was in terms of how schools should discuss the issue on a more holistic basis. But now what I'm seeing really is we're moving away from the sort of like campus talk down to the classroom level. And that's really where I want to at least talk about this evening is what can educators in their classes do? Because as we've seen, I hate to say it, kind of like Ukraine, where unfortunately, yes, it's a lot earlier than where Ukraine is now, but the conversations start to not be in the news as much. We start to have other issues going on. We still don't have a Speaker of the House, which I'm sure we'll continue to have, say in the news. But what I'm trying to say is that unless these conversations become part of the classroom discussion, the conversations won't happen at all unless they're in this sort of Jewish community lens. So what I'd like to talk about when we have more time whether it's a question or other topic is how can educators, whether it's a history teacher, humanities teacher, other sort of topics, how can they broach the subject in a nuanced, sophisticated, non-biased way, at least in a way that makes all students in the class feel comfortable and feel that they can talk about these issues that they're feeling about right now in a way that they feel secure and confident that they can bring it up without feeling that backlash or tension between the educator or the peers. Samantha, maybe I'll throw it to you, see if you have anything to add.
So hi, everyone, and thank you so much for taking time from your evenings and your busy schedules to be here tonight. For a little bit of context, I'm Samantha Vinokor-Merrath, and I work at the Jewish Education Project, which is a New York-based national organization that focuses on education and professional development for Jewish educators from the entire spectrum of the Jewish community. We work in K-12 learning environments, in day schools, yeshivot, part-time Jewish ed spaces with independent educators, and also with parents, recognizing that parents are the primary Jewish educators in the lives of their young people, parents and caregivers. My portfolio is very broad. I oversee our national Israel education work, our work on teens, our Jewish peoplehood work, and our responses to anti-Semitism. Where am I coming from that got me into this role and into this space? I'm originally from New York. I grew up in an American Israeli Jewish household in a public school, became an Israel educator during the Second Intifada, when my parents sent me to Israel in the summers, the way that other people sent their kids to Florida to visit grandparents. And I came back and people told my parents that they must either be liars or really terrible parents because I must have been lying to their kids. I was being sent to Israel and coming back and saying I had a fabulous time. And obviously that could not have been the case. It in fact was, which set me up as a lifelong educator and learner. I've had the pleasure of working actually in the DC Jewish community for 5 years, sat at the Jewish Federation of Greater Washington, overseeing work on teen engagement and education in the community. I'm happy to see familiar names in the chat. And since then have also been in Cleveland and now back here in New York after some years in Israel as well. What have I been hearing? So first of all, people call me a lot about anti-Semitism. My book on anti-Semitism came out last year. It was called #Anti-Semitism Coming of Age During the Resurgence of Hate, and focuses on Jewish Gen Zers and what it means to develop one's identity in the face of rising anti-Semitism. My usual shtick when I'm invited to speak places for the last almost 2 years has been to say, I wish I was being brought to talk about anything other than anti-Semitism. And now I can confidently say, I would give almost anything in the entire world for this to be my regular anti-Semitism conversation. There has been such a profound shift in what was pressing 2 weeks ago, which was pressing and is both timely and timeless, and the entire new world and new depths that we have reached. So what do I hear about? What are teens and young people and those who care about them calling about? They're calling about anti-Semitism. They're calling about what does it mean to how do I stand up to anti-Semitism? How do I stand up to something really blatant? We all know what it is. Swastika drawn on locker of Jewish student. How do I respond when it's a microaggression? And I'm not actually sure if someone meant something to be anti-Semitic, but I have now felt yucky as a Jew because of it. But I don't know if I want to like make things awkward with my friends. How do I figure out what am I supposed to call out? What am I supposed to call in? And what am I supposed to just kind of move on from? How do I deal with loneliness? I, as a Jewish teen, am so proud to be an ally to so many other communities in their times of need. I changed my, filters and profile pictures for Ukraine and for so many other causes. And the silence that our young people, and all of us, quite frankly, you don't have to be so young, have felt from their peers, their actual friends, in their non-Jewish settings that they spend time in, from influencers and organizations and companies that have shown up for other minority groups and have been silent, at best, outright anti-Semitic at worst. How do I deal with this silence? How do I go back to being normal? Because I don't want to lose all of my friends by telling them, you've hurt my feelings by not caring about Israel, but also you've hurt my feelings by not caring about Israel. I have teens asking, what am I supposed to do right now? How am I supposed to help? How do I help? Am I supposed to reach out to Israelis? I haven't actually talked to that, shaliach who was at camp for 5 years. That's really awkward. And how do I deal with the complex, nuanced emotions that I'm having where I'm reading the news, I'm doom scrolling, I'm seeing, thanks to, just the algorithms of social media, I'm at the same time seeing what Israelis are saying and crying out. And also I'm seeing what's happening in Gaza. And that makes me really sad. And that's awful. And I don't know how to respond when I want to show up for Israel and as a Jew. And I don't know if I agree with what's happening. What's up with this humanitarian aid situation? People are calling and asking about that. And the last, and I could keep going on and on and on. But the last one that I'll speak to is, who's here for me? How, just all of the awkwardness of being a teen and the existential crisis of the world. And it is compounding on numerous existential crises. These are teens, lest we forget, who have come of age during the COVID-19 pandemic and the loneliness epidemic and mass shooting epidemic. And what they are craving is for someone to say, it's going to be okay. And can we authentically say, it's all going to be okay? And they want that so badly, and they call asking.
Wow. Very powerful. Thank you. Thank you. I feel you guys are a great pair because, Samantha, you really touched on the heart of what these teens are really feeling. And Aaron really brought up some of these bigger issues that we have to face when we talk about going into the schools in terms of curriculum and education. And so thank you both for sharing. And I think that sort of ties in what you guys shared to the next question, which is, as parents, most of the people on here are parents, and that's how we build this. How do we help our teens? I mean, we can't really say everything's okay. I mean, I want to say it, but so what do we say to them? And how do we help them both emotionally, both skill wise? How do they have conversations? And how do we encourage them? So do you want to answer first this time, Samantha?
Sure. Part of what I will jump in with is saying, wherever the conversation is, or if it hasn't started yet, because you're still figuring out, today's the time to start the conversation. And if you already have, kol hakavod, and if you haven't, it is completely okay. Time to start the conversation. There is not going to be one conversation where you sit down with the young people in your life and say, today's the day we're going to talk about Israel, or today's the day we're going to talk about anti-Semitism. These are ongoing conversations. And I totally recommend starting with your own questions and nuances and vulnerability, not showing up to say, how did you stand up for Israel today? Like, I have no idea. How did one stand up for Israel today? But to say, hey, what are you feeling? What are you feeling about all of this? Are you thinking about what's happening? I, as your parent, am having a really hard time. Or maybe I'm not having a hard time. And like, kudos. But maybe I'm not having a hard time, but I'm seeing this. I can't look away. This is affecting me. Open up that conversation by sharing your own vulnerabilities. Ask them, if you don't know, where are they getting their information? What do they know, or what do they think they know? And what are the things that we have to learn and explore together? What are they looking for support-wise? Are there other people that they're talking to about this, that they've found role models and mentors and spaces? And that's amazing. And to also think about, what's the last Israel conversation that we had as a family? And is that something that's happened? Do they know your thoughts or why you're connected with Israel? And one thing that I would name, we can't prescribe feelings. So it might be that they say, like, yeah, that sucks, but I'm going about my day. I have a math test tomorrow. Thank you, parent, for wanting to do this sit down. We can't make somebody care or be emotionally invested, or not care and be disinvested. The majority of us, the vast majority of us care. We may not know what to do with those feelings and with those emotions, but to allow space for the legitimacy of their fears, their angers, their questions, their desire to check out and say, like, this is too much for me. All of those are completely real and legitimate, and to allow for them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with Samantha more. I'll share, in terms of being vulnerable and opening up. I know I'm on a call with a little over 200 mostly strangers, but just as good practice, you want to show what you mean by that. I mentioned earlier that I was a teacher at the Charles E. Smith Day School for 10 years, and as I'm sure most people on this call heard, Omer Balva, a former student, graduate of JDS, died this past weekend up north, and Omer was a student of mine. He was an amazing individual. I'm sure many of you have read or caught the news about it, but it put a dagger in my heart, to be quite frank, Saturday morning. And I don't, and I know we'll talk about social media later on, I'm sure. And it was the first time I went on social media and just kind of poured my heart out about the way I was feeling since this whole escapade started. And I try not to use it that much, but I couldn't help but just share my feelings with those who knew him and those who didn't know him. And so it was really comforting to get that off my chest. But to Samantha's point, I certainly think there's everything she said, and kind of a term I'd like to throw out there. Certainly the identity piece I think is really important. I'm supposed to go on tomorrow actually to New York. I'm giving a talk at a day school in New York, and before October 7th happened, our first session, I'm doing a multiple session with this school, and the first session was going to be on identity. And then after October 7th happened, I called the administrators and said, hey, do we need to rethink restructure what the first session is? And after talking it through with them, I realized that identity doesn't have to be just Jewish identity. It has, if we ever want to narrow it down, it can also be the identity of how we see ourselves, not just as Jews, but how we see ourselves connected to, obviously, Israel. And I think that's really where that conversation could start with students, particularly whether you've taken your kid to Israel or they haven't been at all, they've only seen a map or a picture. I think starting that identity piece and like what it means, not even to what it means to them, but telling them what it means to you is really important. At JDS, I always did a generational assignment where I had parents or grandparents have the kids interview their parents or grandparents about what Israel meant to them and what the conflict meant to them. And I think for those, particularly depending on the generation, whether you're going back to 48 or 67 or 73, or during the Second Intifada, as Samantha mentioned, we all have a moment in our life where it either clicked on a positive level or had a very negative and traumatic emotion about it. And I think the more students today understand where you as a parent or a grandparent are coming from and how you connect to the country and why the people are so important to you, then that might help them better understand why you're upset at times, and also make them feel more comfortable opening up on how they're feeling in the moment. So I think the last thing I'll say on this part is, again, you don't have to be experts, particularly if you want to, open up with your kids. You don't have to know every single historical fact about it, but I think the identity and the sort of heartfeltness of where you are, that's a really great start to begin with students.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you both for sharing. It just makes me think of all the important conversations I had in the car because we weren't facing each other. That sometimes opening it up in those spaces when we're not looking each other in the eye can be the easiest way to start the conversation. And I love the idea of learning together and being vulnerable. I know that sometimes, like, if I feel really strong about something, like if I feel really strong about Israel, then I want to just tell my kid how strong I feel about Israel, which of course doesn't usually end up with the most productive conversation.
Well, and can I add to that, Sarah?
Yeah.
That is like, I just, and again, this is just from my own personal experience, both in the classroom and as I'm a parent of a 4-year-old, so I haven't really had the deep conversations yet. But what I will say is, it's okay also, by the way, and I know we might get into a little more the nuances later of what's happening, but like, it's okay if your child might not see the world entirely the way you see it, see the country entirely the way you want them to see it. I mean, just like our politics today, we all have different ways of looking at it, both through a generational lens and a family lens. Like, I would just say, hear them out, see what they have to say. And again, that conversation, that fact that you're listening to them might make them feel more open than ever to at least engage on hearing different ideas and feeling shut out.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate the thought. I want to sort of focus a little bit on our schools and our classrooms, and we actually, we put this together so quickly. We didn't ask people to put questions in when they signed up for the webinar, but someone was smart enough to email me the question. And I think her question was pretty relevant to this, which is like, what if you feel that your school is using biased resources about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? Like, what can I do about it? And I would say also, but I'm going to combine that with a few other questions, because we get sort of that thought, and then we get, they're not doing anything. And how can I be proactive to help them have those conversations? I work closely with a lot of schools in the DMV, and I see a lot of people want to avoid the conversation. Like, the easiest thing is, let's not talk about it, and then we don't have to have a conflict, which, yeah, it doesn't really seem to be working so well. So I'm going to start actually with you, Aaron, because I know that curriculum sort of up your end, and obviously Samantha, you can join in too. But like, how do we help advocate for these kind of things in our schools and classrooms?
Absolutely. So let's start with the second question, which is like, if it's, either if it doesn't come up at all, or I guess combine the two, or it's a resource that I particularly feel is fair in my child's classroom. So, just a quick example of this has happened in my own personal life. My niece lives in Raleigh, North Carolina. She goes to a prestigious prep school out there. And with the week after after the first weekend, the whole week, she's an 11th grader, in an AP history class. My sister-in-law would say to her, "Did you talk about it? It's Monday. Have you talked about it Tuesday, Wednesday?" The entire week, my niece would come back and say, like, "We haven't discussed, what's happened in the Middle East once." And so by Friday morning, my sister-in-law emailed the teacher, and said, like, "Hey, this is a really important thing where, she's one of a few Jews in her school, but like, this is really important to us. Also, it's important as like a world event. I don't understand why this hasn't come up once in your class." And the teacher wrote my sister-in-law back and essentially said, "I don't feel comfortable talking about it because I'm not qualified. I don't have enough expertise or background to really talk about these issues, these very difficult and complex things." And so I found that a little bit of a cop-out, to be quite frank, and not to call whatever this anonymous teacher is out, but like, to me, you live in, Raleigh, North Carolina, a very big area with universities, a lot of resources at your disposal. I find that, and I know we're talking here locally, but if teachers find that they don't want to either have the conversation, not because they're afraid to, but because they don't, well, I guess it is because they're afraid to, but because it's not that they don't want to have the conversation, they don't feel confident in having the conversation. To me, there are so many different outlets they can approach. We live in, one of the best areas where think tanks, universities, organizations like AJC, like Jewish Education Project, there are a lot of people out there that are willing to go to schools and support a teacher in the classroom to just at least give a general overview. And I think that, Sarah, to where your point is that even if someone were to come in, well, maybe they're biased, or maybe the resources I just Google online, I don't know if they're good or not. To me, at the end of the day, you have to reach out to those who you trust, or at least you get recommended to, and say like, hey, I want to give the students an overview on US foreign policy, let's say. Where do you, as an expert in that area, where should I look? People, I will tell you, as at JDS, I cold called so many different subject matters that I wasn't really familiar with, and people are happy to come in and teach. 95% of the time when I would email an outside expert, they were happy to come into school and give a presentation on their subject matter. People are thirsting right now to talk about this, and if you as an educator don't feel comfortable, bring someone else in who is, and as an educator, learn from them. Take what resources they have. Call a different person. Ask what resources they have. Use multiple resources. I just feel like educators are using the cop out now. Be like, it's too sensitive. We can't talk about it all. But as we all know, that's not going to fly, particularly with parents in our communities, with just the community as a whole. This is a worldwide issue right now, and whether you're Jewish or not, I know that students want to discuss this, and if they feel like they're not going to talk it in the classroom where it's a controlled environment, hopefully, then they're going to go outside, and that's where I get concerned, particularly where we, have social media and all the other components that they're going to take information that might not be accurate. So I guess in short, and I definitely want to get to Samantha, I just want to say that there are a lot of organizations that have really quality material. I'm happy to share what we've put together as both an AJC resource and outside resources at the end of this call. And I do think, it's just up to the educators to decide, I need to sit down, decide what kind of way do I want to approach this subject, and then roll up their sleeves and get started. I know it sounds, I don't know, just kind of simple, but it's sometimes hard for educators to accept that, but I really feel like they need that extra oomph these days.
Thank you. Samantha?
I mean, yes, and I think that when it comes to everything Aaron said, absolutely. I think one of the things that I want to emphasize in addition is that when it comes to I see a few different levels. There's a timeliness and a timelessness to everything that we're saying. The timeliness is right now, Israel is at war, and our kids have questions, and our kids are scared, and we as a community are struggling with this reality and the reality of what human beings are capable of. And 2 weeks ago, you could have invited Aaron and I to talk about anti-Semitism and Jewish teens. And maybe not as many people would have come, but we were talking about this 2 weeks ago, and schools needed to be talking about it 2 weeks ago. There is the inside of the classroom element, which I think Aaron did an awesome job of talking about, and then also the school culture element. So what is happening in terms of anti-bullying language? What are policies? And I'm sure this is a crowd that I don't need to necessarily spell this out to. What are policies that make Jewish students feel welcome? What does it mean for a school community, not just an individual teacher or classroom, to prioritize something in both the explicit and then the implicit curriculum of the school based on what they share, what they say, what they prioritize talking about? One thing that I think is really helpful, we all know, anyone who's an educator on this call, teachers are overworked. I once told Aaron when he was at JDS, I thought he had the easiest job in the Jewish world. It just sounded so fun to me because I was like, the kids are legally required to just sit there and you just get to do education. You don't have to recruit them to come. And I have reformed. I understand that being a classroom teacher is a lot more than you just get to do the fun part. Although I do still think it is a really fun job. But teachers, to add anything to their curriculum just because it's the right thing to do, they may totally agree it is the right thing to do. And I have a test that I have to give. I have documentation that I have to provide. One of the things that I have found to be most effective, and you have tremendous resources in the DC area to do this just as much as we're doing it in New York, is to figure out what are the state standards that these folks are teaching towards, and how do we create and adapt what fits into it? So we have speakers, for example, who come into English language classes, English language arts classes, And the content is about Jews, Judaism, anti-Semitism. But the reason that we're invited in is not because everyone wants to talk about Jews, Judaism, and anti-Semitism. It's because, and I did not know about this, the curriculum for this particular year of school is about thinking about the difference between first and third person narration. Now, I'm a reader. I'm not an English teacher by any means. But to recognize, okay, the school is thinking about first and third person narration. Why shouldn't it be the awesome speaker whose content is centered around anti-Semitism and raising one's voice, who happened to have written a young adult novel about such a topic, but uses first and third person narration? So not to say that every parent here is going to now come and like figure out what are the state standards in Maryland or Virginia or DC that my kids' teachers are teaching towards. But there are institutions that do this and partners who are out there to help you figure out, yes, they should be talking about Israel because it is the right thing to do at this moment. And what are the ways that we can make it make sense?
Right. Thank you. Well, this is my question. This is not a planned question, but what if you're not sure you trust the school to have the conversation, which is what I've heard from a lot of parents?
Well, I guess
I don't know if you can answer that one.
oh, look, I mean, it's look, I get it. It's tricky. I mean, the question, if I reverse in my head, it's like, would I prefer the school not try at all, or at least, is there harm in giving it a shot? And I realize harm could certainly come out of that conversation in terms of might be better not to bring it up. But to me, this is my naivete, just background. I always feel like it's better to try than not try at all. I feel like if a school doesn't at least, and to Samantha's point too, it doesn't have to be directly on what's happening on the ground this second. It can certainly be about the wider lens of, this is happening in the region, in the world, but we also have to recognize that what's sort of the secondary of this, or the fallout of this is, say, anti-Semitism. And it's a good reminder, whether it's a student-wide, way of getting the school together, or whatever the way the school administration would approach it. I think using a lens like that, we don't have to address the issues, but address the sort of factors that are hurting our students right now. And yes, some of our students are hurting because they feel the emotion of what's happening to their Israeli friends or cousins or family in Israel. But on a wider spectrum, to me, it's about how they're being talked to or harassed, or how they feel they don't have a voice in this really complex situation. So the school can always zoom out and talk about the things that are really hurting kids, just like anti-Semitism, and making people aware, giving examples. And I'm sure Samantha can go into this much more depth if we have time about, when someone says to you, why are the Jews doing this, or why is Israel doing this, talking to you as if you as an American Jew have any say at all of what's happening in Israeli policy, that can make kids feel really nervous and anxious and not know how to respond to such an outlandish question. So I think if schools have those conversations, that's just, if not more, meaningful.
I 100% agree. And I would also just jump in and say, we need to also measure our expectations for schools. Yeah. I think Aaron's point is so well taken. Even if a school isn't prepared to have a conversation about Israel, they can certainly have a conversation about bullying and how do we support our kids who are feeling silenced, the same way that they have protocols in place to do this work, because we are not alone in feeling silenced in our moment of need. And like, they know how to do so much of this. At the same time, we can't expect a public, or I should say a non-Jewish school, to have the same conversation, to be equipped to, or even necessarily have it be appropriate to have the same conversation that they would have in a Jewish environment. So we need to care about our schools, 100%. We need to advocate for our kids to be in safe and healthy learning environments that support the complex identities that they hold, including their Jewish identities. And that's why also we're here, because these conversations need to be happening at home and in Jewish spaces as well, so they can show up in the different ways that they do.
Great. Beautiful. And I want to add, because one of the programs that I run at JCRC is called Student to Student, where we take Jewish teens into schools to talk about what it means to be a Jewish student today, which is a great way to build empathy and understanding about who we are. We touch on anti-Semitism and the Holocaust and Israel. And it's so interesting because this week we went into a school in Fairfax where the kids were in 9th grade and they had never met a Jewish kid and they didn't know what the Holocaust was, and they completely did not. They were mostly first generation Americans, mostly from South America and Central America. They didn't even really know about the conflict. So it was interesting because we got to do a lot of education, but in a way there was like no pushback. There was no, like, it was just so not at all what we sort of expected, contrasted with another school where they postponed us a couple of weeks because also there happened to be no Jewish kids in those classes, and the kids, there was a lot of Muslim kids, and the teacher had been out with COVID and felt like she needed time to talk to her kids and make sure, even though our talk about Israel is all about personal relationships, it was about making sure they were ready. So it's sort of, it is sort of what you're, I mean, we have to be where the teachers are at. We have to help offer resources that they can utilize. And, but it does feel complicated, but thank you. So I do want to get to the next question. I have one more question, and then I want to open it up to the group. And Samantha, I'm gearing this one more towards you, which is about social media. I know you wrote that great article, if you guys didn't see it in the forward, about teens and social media right now at this point in this moment. And I kind of said this to you earlier, that I feel like the world's shifted. I feel like a couple of years ago, kids would talk about success DMing a friend who reposted something that was anti-Semitic or anti-Israel, and they could explain to the kid why it was. And now I feel like teens are saying to me, I'm not engaging. I can't do it. So how do we help them? When we don't even know what a DM is. Oh no.
Muscles. We know what a DM is. You got this, Sarah. A few different thoughts on social media. So in a pre-COVID-19 world, when we would have a conversation about social media, there would be the juxtaposition from many, say, of the non-teen generation, many non-Gen Zers or now Gen Alpha-ers as well, who would say there's online and then there's real life. And I hope that we have all come to a place of recognizing real life is happening online. It is just different. We are having this real life moment online thanks to our technology, and it's amazing. And it's amazing that we're able to do it. Everything that is happening online is just as real for our young people as what is happening in person, if not more so. If we take away the like existential threat of anti-Semitism, if you were in high school and facing any type of bullying, if someone was being mean to you in any capacity, you could leave. You could go home. You did not have whatever things were being said that hurt you in some way literally beamed into your hand, into your pocket, probably into your bed, because we have very bad social media boundaries, and many of our teens are sleeping with their phones, and many adults on this call are sleeping with our phones. And it is so real. At the same, so we can't belittle it. First of all, there's no room to say that wasn't real. Someone posted a meme. Okay, it's real, but it is different. So what does that mean? If in person, someone saw someone in their lives saying something anti-Semitic. So if your teen heard another teen in their friend group making an anti-Semitic comment, we know what to do. It might be awkward. And I will not discount like the legitimacy of, I don't want to be made uncomfortable any more so than I already am, as a totally legitimate response from a teen. We know how to report. We know how to call someone in or to call someone out. Our teens are actually really good at this, of standing up if they see some kind of injustice, because we have done an amazing job of raising them with strong moral consciences. But then we get online and the answer is different. So while I would say to a teen very confidently, yeah, if you saw someone using a slur towards somebody else in person, we are upstanders and not bystanders. Online, my answer is either report it as hate speech or let it go and keep scrolling and don't engage. Because when you comment on anti-Semitic content on social media, the algorithm directs more attention and more prominence to anti-Semitic content on social media. So that's not to say that they shouldn't be online. The article that I wrote says that we're not taking them off of Instagram or TikTok or any of the other spaces they spend time. And many of them, by the way, in their loneliness at this moment, are finding connection online. They're finding who are those Jewish content creators and influencers who are churning out amazing content at this time and who like I'm super excited to follow, and everyone can follow me on Instagram. It's a good thing that they're in these spaces when they are used healthily and when we're using positive Jewish digital citizenship. And to get to Sarah, your actual question, what happens when my friend posts something that I'm not okay with on social media? If they're feeling brave, they can DM them and say like, do you know what this is? That's really awkward. 9 out of 10 times, they're not going to do it. So here's my advice. If it's someone you do not know in real life, either let it go, keep scrolling and don't engage, or when appropriate, report it as hate speech. Feel free to use the unfollow button as liberally as you can at this moment, because mental health is super important. And we don't need to hate follow anyone right now. None of our teens, with all that they have going on, also need to have their feed being clogged with people who make them feel even worse. And if it is someone who they know in real life, an offline life, get it? No? Okay. If it's someone that they know in offline, in-person life, to the extent that they are comfortable, in-person conversation, it does not have to be going over to a friend and saying, I think you're anti-Semitic based on the content that you posted online. That's horrifying. But you could say, hey, I saw what you posted last night. What did you mean by that? Where'd you get that? I just need to like give you a heads up. That made me really uncomfortable. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but it was not good for me. If you were silent, if you weren't necessarily anti-Semitic, to say like, hey, I'm having a moment right now as a Jewish person, as your Jewish friend, I need some support. Our kids actually do have great friends, and hopefully by approaching in a spirit of non-accusation, of questioning, and of being willing to learn in that space, they'll be able to open some doors. I also want to emphasize, this is a moment to be selfish. Their mental health is first. If they are not interested in risking a friendship because they are so overwhelmed by all their feels right now, or if they don't want to start a fight because they're not quite sure if what has made them uncomfortable is worth it. First of all, if they've been made uncomfortable, their feelings are valid and their feelings are worth it. And it's not for any of us to send them on the charge to save the Jewish people, via TikTok. If they are saying, yeah, that person like posted something, I'm just kind of not going to talk to them for a little while, but I really don't want to like go call them out on it. That is also a completely legitimate thing to do. And then there's a space to figure out, based on how bad this content was, what's the in between. So is it, hey, my kid really doesn't want to have this conversation with their friend, but the content is dangerous enough and upsetting enough that this is an awesome time to call the JCRC, or to call AJC, or to call me, or to call ADL, whatever it might be, and say, there's some hate speech stuff going around in the 10th grade class at this school. We can anonymize that. It does not have to be, that person was mean to my child and now they're humiliated and are never going to talk to me again. There's a collectivity that is actually really powerful as well.
And I could just add one last thing, less about the social media, but just that is that, I'm looking at the questions, and they're fantastic questions, at least what people are putting in the Q&A. But I just want to say, when parents do better, kids do better, and just in terms of that mindset. And lastly, I know we talked a bunch about schools, but let's not forget school counselors. Sometimes they're the lifeblood of a school system, and particularly remind your students of that if they are vulnerable, if they are feeling, if nothing maybe particular has happened, but they just need an outlet that's not their parents or a family member. Remind them about their school counselor. I know sometimes it's hard in a public school with so many students, but the counselors are there and they should be able to help students navigate, particularly when it comes to the social lens and then connecting it to social media.
Well, and I'll add to that, Aaron, that a lot of people, I know in a lot of the schools, they talk about having a trusted adult, that everyone should have a trusted adult, whether it's a school counselor or someone else. And I think helping encourage your child to develop that relationship is a great point. And I think these are all, okay, I'm feeling really guilty, Samantha, because I did pressure my daughter in responding to someone. Now I'm realizing I should have let her be where she's at. But no, this is like
No judgment.
Great reminders for us and really great ways to think about it. And I do think this idea is it's hard not to put what I'm feeling. We are all a mess right now. Well, I am a mess. I can't speak for anyone else. And it's really hard not to put that on around the people around me that I love and care about. And they need to be where they're at. So thank you. That was help both of you. What you said was very helpful. I did want to, we have a lot of questions. We're going to get to as many of them as we can. But one of the earlier questions we got was about a swastika that was drawn on the bathroom wall of their child's elementary school. And the child is more aware of Israel issues than maybe other 10-year-olds, and the combination is leaving him feeling unsafe and anxious. And the parents asking about what are the best actions the school and I as a parent should take to help my child feel safe. And I want to add to that I have talked to so many parents in the past week, as both of you probably have too, whose kids are not feeling safe at school. And so
and outside of school, by the way,
yes,
so if you're
right, good point.
Certainly in their communities at large, just to throw that out there. I know, kids are at sports games, and then all of a sudden they get shouted at about something, and that's also been happening a lot. So on a whole, we are definitely in a very difficult, sort of community right now. Sorry, Samantha, did you want to kick this one off?
I mean, you started. Do you want to?
Sure, as I did.
I use it to answer.
I do. Lucky me. No, look. First off, it doesn't matter. It's an elementary school student, an 8-year-old or an 18-year-old. Obviously, finding a swastika anywhere is incredibly difficult. I used to live in Logan Circle, and right next to my condo, I walked outside one day and had one right on the sidewalk. So even if you're 38 years old, it's very traumatic to see. So look, I think the first thing, and I'm going to address it more generally, less than a specific elementary school or middle school or high school, but generally speaking, if you haven't reported that immediately, odds are a kid has a cell phone on them. Make sure it sounds horrible to say, but have them take a picture, document it as soon as they see it. That way, it's there. If police are involved, they have evidence as well, and report it, whether it's through, again, JCRC, ADL. I'd say those are the two big ones in terms of Jewish organizations that you should let know right away. I will say, even if I were to work at AJC, when I saw that swastika and where I lived in Logan Circle, I called the police. I let ADL know. Within 10 minutes, a DC police car came, and I took a report, and they did what they had to do. And within the next day, it was paved over and painted over with. So I guess what I'm saying is, in a school basis, there are, outside factors that we can deal with it. Inside school, obviously, it sounds like common sense. Let the administrators know as soon as possible, or an adult teacher, etc. know. Again, take documentation of it. And I would say, as a parent, this, as we talked about very early on, this is, I don't want to use the word opportunity, but this is the outlet to tell those administrators, this is why you need to have the conversation with students or the student body. This is why the discussion of anti-Semitism, whether, again, the elementary school to high school on a appropriate level of age bracket, but the conversations need to be had, because otherwise kids either think it's funny and for sport, or they're doing it seriously and not out of ignorance. And therefore, either way, it's a conversation that our students are dealing with. And if they don't address it in that school, then it'll continue to go on even after things start to simmer down in Israel, and no one will know that this is something that is just a terrible, terrible, hate-filled speech that should be stopped right away.
Yeah, can I just, Samantha, before I want to add one thing to what Aaron said, and then we'll go over to you, and maybe, Alexis, this might be a good time to put some of these links in the chat. So on the JCRC website, we have a link to each of the different school districts if you're in a public school, and there are links to to filing a hate, if there's a hate incident. You can file there. I agree about the ADL really is the one that tracks it. And the only way we can have those numbers are if people call. So it's super important that you call ADL. If you want help figuring out what to do at the school, call me, call JCRC. We're happy to help you with that. We're not really, ADL is the one that tracks the numbers. And I can't emphasize how important and helpful that is, I think, for everybody. Sorry. While we were on that, I wanted to share about Samantha.
Good plug. Yeah, no, I think everything that was said is wonderful. I would also just emphasize in terms of actions as a parent, what are the safe spaces and who are the safe people in your child's school? And how do you double down on that? Because I'm reading into this question, this child is now feeling unsafe and anxious and is uncomfortable in their school environment. So who is there to take care of them? And reminding them, the classroom teacher, the specials teachers, whomever they have positive relationships with and interactions, their friends who are with them in solidarity in a 10-year-old version. Who and what are all of the spaces that make this school a positive and healthy environment? And particularly to what Aaron said in terms of like opportunity, there's also something to be said. Nobody who is 10 is drawing a swastika if there hasn't been something that has taught them that this is maybe not anything associated with the Holocaust and with Jews, but is something provocative and something that's going to get a huge rise out of people. And Aaron, I think you had said like, maybe it's funny, maybe it's like antagonistic, maybe like there's so many things that we could go into the psychology of this unknown kid. But what is the restorative work that has to happen in the school community? Because especially since we don't know who it is, we have to be doing some work again within and then beyond the Jewish experience to say, what does it mean to use hate speech and hate symbols in this learning environment? What does that do? And what does that change and damage about our school culture? And making sure that this is seen not just as something that's impacting the Jews, but something that speaks to the school culture that is being set up that is just absolutely not acceptable. And for the parent who asked this question, I'm so genuinely sorry that you and your child are experiencing this.
Absolutely.
Can I pick a question or?
Oh, can we do that? Oh,
I don't know.
I had one I was going to ask, but I'll let
I
you
saw a
guys.
few
No,
that I'm
Sari,
like,
okay, you ask yours first, and then
no, go. I gotta.
You guys each
got
pick one, and then because we don't have too
Great.
much more.
All right.
Samantha,
You
you
go,
have.
Samantha, and I'll pick one.
there are just so many good ones.
There are
I know,
good ones.
I know.
I'm really drawn. There's a question that was asked about bias. I've seen bias pop up a few times of how do you make sure that material isn't biased, or the media specialist at school said that both sides are biased. I think I'm about to make myself unpopular.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
No, just joking.
Thank you. Everything has bias. When we show up for Israel, bias does not mean false. Bias does not mean fake news. Bias does not mean any of the things that perhaps as a society we have internalized the word bias to mean. But when I show up saying I am here as a Jewish educator, as a Zionist, as someone who is coming to talk and to teach about Israel, I am coming as a deeply biased person. Does that mean that I am coming with false narratives and fake news and not legitimately naming there is another side that is not mine that I can give certain facts on but could never fully speak to? Absolutely not. Everything is biased. In the last flare-up of conflict between Israelis and Palestinians in May 2021, I had left the DC community by then and was working in the Cleveland Jewish community. And as many cities did, and I know DC did as well, there was a rally sponsored by the Federation and the JCRC and the Israeli American Council in support of and solidarity with Israel. And I showed up, as I do, as a proud Zionist Jewish educator, and ran into the mom of a teen who I was working with who said, "You have to go call my daughter and yell at her because she didn't come today." And then I got to first say, actually, it is not my job to call your kids and yell at them. And I'm not doing that. But also, what? And she said, my daughter said that this is not an unbiased event, that it's a biased event, and that she wasn't going to come if both sides weren't being presented, and you have to go call her and tell her she's wrong and this is an unbiased event. This was a deeply biased event. That is not bad. That is not problematic. It was a pro-Israel rally being sponsored by the major organizations in the local Jewish community. What I can do, and what I am honored to do every day, is invite your daughter for frozen yogurt and to ask her why she felt uncomfortable showing up in a space that was biased towards Israel. And we had that conversation. It's great. It's transformative, only good things. So when we have this question of how do we get non-biased material, everyone is carrying a bias. The best thing that can happen is for an educator to name it, because anyone who comes and says here with no bias, I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt and say is lying to themselves more so than that they are misleading you. I am biased towards the Jewish community. I am biased because of the vulnerability that I feel right now. I am biased because of how much I care about what your kids and you are experiencing. And I can use the word nachba. I can talk about how much I have an 18-month-old, as a mommy, am heartbroken for any civilian who is going to lose their child, or a child who's going to lose their parent. That does not make me any less biased. It makes me a human. It makes me multifaceted. But I just want to give space to saying there is material, of course, that is anti-Israel. That is not the same as material that is unbiased. And I just want us to think about that in the context of what we're expecting of our schools and of our content.
That's great. Thanks.
No, I think that was excellent, Samantha, and kind of weaved into, there are a number of questions I'm going to just kind of generally speak about, which is, my son or daughter was told about the occupation, that Jews are pushing Palestinians into the sea, a lot of different contexts in that level. And so I just want to address that to pick off for what Samantha was saying, thinking about being as a history teacher, my goal, just adding to the bias, like my goal is always to try to walk in a classroom and make kids think I was, a Democrat or a Republican, a Likudnik or a Labor person. Hopefully it was always down the middle. But I recognize, particularly in the time we're living in, and to Samantha's point, that bias is okay, but recognizing, as a student, I really feel it's okay that let me rephrase that. I recognize that some students might not have the confidence to, as some people writing in the chat, to go out and say maybe the historical connections on why Jews left Gaza in 2005, what is happening with Hamas since 2007. They don't have that complexity or that background, and that's okay. They don't have to be experts. They have to be able to say, just like Samantha said, I understand where you're coming from. I understand that there's pain there. I understand that innocent lives are being lost, but you also have to see where I'm coming from. And I really do feel that there's 2 points to this. Is one, that in a controlled environment like a classroom, where hopefully there is a adult and educator that can allow for nuanced conversation and allow for people to express themselves in a respectful manner. But then, as other questions are pointing out, there's the sort of outside of school or outside of classroom mentality where, as I mentioned earlier, you're at a soccer game and someone yells at you, go back to Palestine, XYZ, or they say something incredibly derogatory. And that's also where the conversation or the feelings of emotions just pile up and kids don't know how to respond. And I think I just real quick go back to an example that I went through, and I can only discuss things that I know has either worked in the classroom that I've personally gone through. When I was on campus in the early days of the Second Intifada, I was president of my Hillel, and we had an event, and I brought in a former IDF general to come speak to just the general campus. And in the front row, I saw my professor. I saw a number of peers who I knew, and they would not, and long story short, they would not let this retired general speak for a minute, 2 minutes. He kept going up. He wasn't able to speak. And I finally got up to the podium as being in my position. And I said, and I pleaded with the students in the room, please let him speak. We're not here to tell you what to think. We're here to give you a perspective. And after hearing my plea, he was able to go up, give his perspective, and then had a 45-minute Q&A where he was able to answer these people. I'm not saying that students need to do this, and whether they're in 8th grade or 11th grade, obviously as a university it's different, but what I'm trying to say is that kids need to feel empowered, and the way they feel empowered is to be able to say, like, here's how I'm feeling, but I want to hear what you have to say as well. Not to dismiss people, but to say, I want to hear you, but I also want you to hear me. And I think the more we get kids to do that, the more, hopefully, as a community, we can get together and find ways to at least have that conversation, difficult as it may be.
Yeah, they're all really good things for us to be thinking about as we move. So thank you. I want to there's one question here that I'm going to answer, and then I'm going to let you guys each have a final thought. So someone asked about, there was an issue with something that happened in the classroom, and they reached out to the school to file a complaint, never heard, they contacted the school twice and didn't hear back. What should they do? So that's kind of a great time to reach out to me. So what I do is I try to help you work with whatever school it is. And usually we start with the teacher. If the teacher doesn't respond, we go to the principal or one of the admins in the school. And hopefully we have pretty good relationships with most of the schools, and we can help you get in the door. But you should expect a response when you file a complaint. Yeah, that is not an unrealistic thing to expect. I'm sorry that was not your experience. So I just want to leave that. And so I know it's already 9:00 and I don't want to keep us on too long, but I want to give you guys both a few minutes if you have some final thoughts that you want to share.
I'll let Samantha take the latter because her voice is amazing, and she should get the last word. So
oh my God, okay, I'm honored. No pressure.
I'm happy to just take the last 30 seconds of everyone else's time. First, I just want to say thank you again for having me tonight. You're welcome to email me if you have further questions after this. I just want to make a plug. AJC has a Leaders for Tomorrow program, LIFT. We have a cohort in Washington, D.C. that we still have applications until next week. In short, you can check it out online, but it's a way that students from the community can go talk to other Jewish peers about what's happening, both regionally within our community, with their identity. It's a really great program that AJC's had for the last 9 years, so I strongly recommend checking out the Leaders for Tomorrow program. And the last thing I'll say is, I know these conversations as parents can be incredibly challenging, difficult. That's an understatement. When we encounter ignorance or hostility instead of understanding and support, and handling these discussions effectively is really vital. Whether, again, it's an educator in a classroom, a counselor, a soccer coach, whatever it is, a parent, both in face-to-face conversations and on social media platforms. And interactions come and go, and hopefully they're all civil. I know sometimes they certainly can't be, but I think the more we tell kids to make thoughtful decisions, thoughtful engagement, know when to walk away, know when that no matter who you're trying to convince, it's not going to happen. It's not worth your time, both, again, online or in person. And so be productive, be the best you can be a proud Jew at this time, be someone that was a head held high and saying that here's what I believe and why. But again, I'm happy to hear what you have to say. But ideally, we aim to engage in meaningful conversations in person rather than through screen. And so all I want to say is tell your children that it's okay to be aware. It's okay to be outspoken. It's okay to be proud. And I just think the more we do that, the more we give them that confidence, the more they'll go out there and make us proud. So that's what I have to say about that.
Amen. That's beautiful. I'm really honored to be here tonight. And again, I really want to express my appreciation both for the professional partners and organizations that are here, Aaron and Sarah and Alexis and AJC and JCRC, but also really for all of you for taking of your time to have these conversations. We've talked a lot about the ways that we can all act on the deep personal responsibility that all of us feel at this moment. I can't speak for everyone here, but I can say this is our day job and our night job and our all the time job. We have chosen beautifully to devote ourselves professionally as well as in so many ways personally to Am Yisrael, to the Jewish people. Not all of you have. There are Jewish professional parents on this call, and that's awesome. And there are those of you who are here as Jews who, like, I've heard people have other jobs. I don't really know about it. I've never had a non-Jewish job. But I've heard that some of you can. So, like, that sounds awesome. What are boundaries? And yet we've taken on, whether or not you have a Jewish job, this sense of deep personal responsibility on behalf of the Jewish people, to advocate in classrooms, to advocate in school environments, in local government, in all of the spaces where you spend time. I want to first say that is amazing. Thank you all for the work that you do. And it is not the responsibility of anyone in the Jewish community to fix anti-Semitism any more so than any of us would expect a member of any other minority group to take on the responsibility of fixing the hatred against them. So if you would not stand up and say a member of the LGBTQ plus community is responsible for solving homophobia, to put the burden, particularly onto our young people, of saying, you need to fix anti-Semitism, how are you going to fight anti-Semitism, is not their responsibility alone. 100%. We all have a role to play in calling out injustice and calling out hatred. We have a vested, biased interest in fixing anti-Semitism because it is wrong. And we cannot be alone in that, because it's our Jewish identity needs to transcend what it has meant in an age-old way to be victims of hatred of Jews. So yes, this is a really hard moment. This is an unfathomably hard moment. I have never experienced a moment like this. And there's also, as Aaron was speaking to, the Jewish pride and the Jewish joy, and making sure that even for those of us who are having deeply awakened Jewish identity moments right now, hopefully not too far away from now, when this ends, when there's a next step, when the next pivot point for the Jewish people comes, what is the Jewish identity going to be that we instill in our young people and in ourselves that's not a defiance to the hatred that we've received or the indifference that we've been crying out against? What is the Jewish joy that's going to make them want to opt in and want to stand up and want to, just as all of you are doing, say, I could just be a regular person and go worry about my math test, but I have this vested interest in fighting anti-Semitism and making sure this school environment is safe for our family and for our greater family and for humanity. And how are they going to find the Jewish joy that empowers and enables them to do that? I have a lot of thoughts about how, but that's for the next webinar.
Another webinar.
Next webinar. I'm just putting into the chat right now, in addition to the resources that were shared about the Jewish Education Project's parent work, my own email contact info, as well as my Instagram for those who have enjoyed the social media space. And I'm more than happy to continue the conversation. But thank you, Aaron, Alexis, and of course, Sarah, and everyone who's here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you both. I want to say that in the day in and day out, I don't always get the chance to reflect, and to hear from both of you was really inspiring for me, and I hope was helpful for all of you that are on this call. And we will be sharing this with a lot of people that wanted to come that couldn't be here tonight. So thank you. Thank you all.